Well, hello everybody to the apparently four-ish people that are here, and welcome. It's nice to have you all around. I just thought that it would be fun to talk about the more recent Superman movie that just came out, which I guess is pretty evident from the title and the description of the video and stuff. But uh, haven't done this kind of live in a while, where I just sit and chat with you all about stuff. And so, we'll just kind of see how things roll here. Definitely, I'm looking forward to having people be active in the chat, because I don't know that I could sit here and really flesh out a big, huge review of Superman just talking on my own. But I do definitely have some thoughts, both about what the movie was like, how it didn't meet my expectations, whether or not I enjoyed it, whether or not it was political or woke. So I think we can have some fun. But please, if you're around, throw things in the chat so we can turn this into a conversation, so you're not at the mercy of my off the cuff live stream reviewing skills. Scuzz Bopper, nice to see you. Username not found. You seem like an interesting person. Thank you for all your many comments. Seems like you're eager to see this up and going. We are also, this is going to be a little different. We are also going to have somebody join us, Dark Side of Delight Productions. You probably see them in the chat. I offer patrons often, wink, wink, if you're not a patron, it's one of the benefits that come with the territory. I often will offer them the chance to both either get in their comments a little early, and I'll go check Patreon for it, or even join in live. And much to my pleasant surprise, Dark Side of Light Productions said, hey, I'll join in the conversation. So I will bring him in at some point. I'm not sure exactly where. We'll just have to see where this rolls. From what I understand, he has a bit of a different perspective than I do on the movie. He's an actual filmmaker, as I understand. So it'll be interesting to get a good different perspective, and also just have somebody to talk to other than sitting here in an empty basement chatting directly into a camera, which feels a little weird, I won't lie. So I think Scuzz Barber said hi to you. You said you saw it today. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Drew Harrison, hello lovelies, hit the like. A couple of my regulars are here. We have about 10 people, so not so bad to start with. So about the movie, I guess I'll dive right into it. I actually liked it. I enjoyed it. I can see how it wasn't everybody's favorite. I had to definitely adjust some expectations going into it, and I guess I'll get into all that. My history, just so you know where I'm coming from, I'm not speaking about this as a Superman expert of any kind. I haven't read a lot of Superman comics or comics in general. I got probably too much of my initial impression of Superman from like Super Friends and stuff like that, watching that as a kid. As far as Superman movies go, my earliest recollection is my parents said they were going to take us to the theater and see Superman, and this was Superman 2. And they took us there, and the movie started, and my first thought was, what the hell? I was expecting a cartoon. This is boring. These are real people. I was pretty young at the time. And then as the movie went on, I actually found the movie to be pretty scary and distressing, because of course there's supervillains flying around and hurting people and stuff like that. And so Superman 1 and 2 were pretty big at that time. There would always be big movie specials playing and stuff like that. And so clearly the Christopher Reeve Superman became a big part of how I saw the character and how I understood the property. And that's probably most of the depth of where my knowledge comes from. Of course, I'd see little comic representations or little things. There's all kinds of stuff floating around in the atmosphere when it comes to Superman. So I have a general idea what he's like, but I don't have, I'm not really deep into the lore or the big, I don't know, all the history of Superman and stuff like that, because I know comics change a lot and there are different iterations of different characters. So part of what feeds into my experience along with the Christopher Reeve movies is just having seen the ones that followed, of course, and I think most people consider those underwhelming at best. There was the Superman Returns movie. I'm forgetting the name of the young man who played him in that one. That was just boring, and I don't think that's a controversial opinion to have. I don't think most people are super excited by that one. And uh, then the Zack Snyder movies, ick. Those were not really Superman to me. And if you disagree, please let me know. I have a feeling a lot of people probably feel that way unless you're a Snyder bro. Just trying to turn Superman into something dark and brooding and overly serious, it doesn't really work with a character. And I think there's been a whole conversation about this. If Superman is too lighthearted and too one-dimensionally heroic for you, then you probably shouldn't make a Superman movie. Or if you don't think that it's, culturally relevant, maybe this isn't the time to make a Superman character movie and you should do something else. Or you can do something that's kind of a hybrid, which I think this movie did fairly well. So I guess the big thing I liked about this movie, just to throw it out there from the start, was that it just was it was a more happy, enjoyable Superman movie. Superman was a nice person in this movie. I don't think I'm saying anything that hasn't already been said over and over again by everybody who's talked about this one. But that just felt like a breath of fresh air to me. Dark Side of the Light Productions says, I actually like this darker Superman, even though the movie's left a little to be desired. And I could see that there were parts of that movie that I liked. I don't know. It didn't feel like Superman to me, but again, this is where I have a very narrow exposure to the property that's largely informed by Christopher Reeve's characterization of Superman. So that's part of it. Part of it also is that the first movie anyway famously turned into a giant punch and destroy buildings fest for like the last 30 to 40 minutes, and I found that just to be dreary and boring. I wasn't bothered by the fact that Superman killed General Zod in and of itself. That's, I don't know. If you're bothered by that, here's something I find curious, and I don't know how often this has been said before. But he's holding on to Zod. They're in the middle of fighting. He snaps his neck in a moment of maybe what looks like desperation, but almost looks a little bit like rage. But then in the original, Superman 2, Superman after Zod's powers had been taken away, Zod's totally powerless. He's at Superman's mercy. So Superman is still a Kryptonian super being, and Zod is basically a human. Zod tells him to kneel. Superman kneels before him, crushes his hand, and then picks him up and throws him down into a pit. So I don't know. That might not be as viscerally angry looking as the Zack Snyder. I forget spacing the name of that Superman, but it might not seem as angry and violent as the Christopher Nolan one, but it seems like an objectively crueler, more deliberate way of painfully killing somebody. Let's see. So I don't know. I got sidetracked talking about those movies, but yeah, I can see why people would like elements of it or maybe like that character. It just didn't do it for me based on my narrow idea of what the character should be. Drew Harrison said, I grew up watching George Reeves' Superman on reruns. That's really interesting. I've never watched any of that. To me, he just always looked incredibly corny. And so it would be interesting to see what those are like. I think I've seen some of the really old cartoons. Abigail says, I'm excited to see this new one. I love DC and I like James Gunn, so I'm hoping this new launch will be successful. That's cool. If you haven't seen it, Abigail or others, please do expect that there will be spoilers in this because I'm not going to hold back from that. Maybe I should have put that right up front. Fletcher from the Deep says, and hi, Fletcher, another regular here. I think it was totally fine for Superman to get into a battle in an IHOP. I guess that's okay. I don't know. Yes, Henry Cavill. Thank you. I should totally know that, and I do. I space out on individual words and names all the time. But so I find that I generally like James Gunn too. I'm not super familiar with him. I guess he did Guardians of the Galaxy, which maybe I should know. Those are obviously pretty fun. I liked the spacing out again, the Suicide Squad movie that he did. That seemed to be pretty cool. And so, yeah, I enjoyed. Username not found says, my opinion of Superman is solely based on how hot the actor is, like Zod. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, it's It's sorry, I got distracted by that weird offhand comment. Um, yeah, so I like the James Gunn style. It was pretty weird when it comes to Superman. Obviously, like most people in the preview, when you see Crypto, the super dog, and you see a dog with a Superman cape coming up and saving him, you know this is not necessarily going to be everything you're expecting from a Superman movie, especially if you want it to be even semi-serious. And that's one of the expectations I had to adjust. Is there's just a lot. This has what I guess I would call a silly tone, but it's silly in a way that I don't know. I didn't really see coming, both in terms of characters like that. Um, I didn't expect him to see him go into a fortress of solitude and have there be a bunch of Kryptonian robots. Uh, all this kind of stuff that you'd think was like way over the top or childish. Uh, and so I don't know, but somehow it just worked. I don't know for me anyway. And maybe my expectations for this were too low. I don't like really frivolous entertainment. I'm not much for just pure explosions and action and stuff like that. Uh, but for some reason, this just hit the right spot in terms of being the right amount of silly and fun and lighthearted, but also feeling a little bit like a heartfelt Superman. So Darkseid said the dog trailer did that for me. Let me know the movie was going to be silly. Yeah, I when I first saw that, I'd kind of written it off, but then the more I heard about it, I just thought I'd give it a try. Uh, Other stuff that didn't really meet my expectations was I expect Superman to be stronger. I think there's another thing people have said. It he he starts off getting being beaten up pretty badly the very first scene of the movie, and then they have to expose him to yellow sun in order to heal him. And this is something that happens a bit throughout the movie, but he seems more easily beaten down and vulnerable, which I think they try to take a little bit of his power away. And uh, I don't know, I don't know if humanize him is the right word, but have a lot more of the stakes rest on his personal weakness rather than kryptonite or saving others and stuff like that. And so I know there was that part of it. There's also just purely the sheer number of other superpowered creatures in the movie. So they started from the beginning, I think mentioning it was in the open, whether they call it a title crawl or just that thing where they tell you how many days before or how many days ago things happened. They mentioned metahumans. And so basically this world is crawling with people of, with superpowers, not to the extent of like My Hero Academia or anything like that. But Superman is a little more, he doesn't stick out as an unusual phenomena or anything like that. And he's not as powerful. And so he's existing in this whole other world. And so that was something to adjust to. Also, simply how quickly he's getting frustrated and kind of, I don't know, I guess just beaten up and kind of in the low phase of the hero's journey. I don't mean this in any like deep mythological way. I just mean, the arc of a hero in a story like this. Usually you see the satisfaction of them being super strong and proving themselves and going around doing that. This one, not only did he start off being injured, but he seems like he's regularly stymied from the very beginning. So that was a bit different. And I had a little bit of frustration with that, both in the fact that he wasn't as powerful as I was expecting, and also he doesn't stick out as a super powerful character because there's so many others. And he's sorry, there's just how quickly he starts, I think he starts to be injured or easily taken down. I don't know. It's hard to tell at that point whether I don't like the movie or I'm just experiencing the frustration I'm supposed to experience on his behalf. But it's a little off-putting at first, but then once I just adjusted my expectations, I really enjoyed it, and I think it worked super well. Grumpy Kevin says Amazon Prime has the George Reeves Superman on streaming. I should just check it out. I doubt it's anything like super great to watch, but it'd be interesting to see that version of Superman a little bit. Dunham Mifflin, who wants to see Superman answer to Congress? And then I'll skip down a little bit. Who wants to see Congress answer to Superman? It was a fun Superman adventure and there was no IHOP. It was exactly what I wanted. Yeah, I don't have the same fixation on IHOP, I guess. I kind of remember there being one, but not super specifically. But yeah, this just felt like the kind of Superman I wanted. Scuzzbopper says, I think Gunn recognizes that comic book superheroes are kind of inherently ridiculous and leans into that deliberately. Dark Side intro titles were one of my favorite parts. Grumpy Kevin says, wasn't expecting a My Hero Academia name drop. Yeah, I watched, I think there's a little bit more I need to watch still, but there's a subscription you have to get that I don't have. And so I just need to get around to that at some point. But yeah, this isn't the point where 80 something to 90 something percent of the world has quirks in their case. But I think Scuzzbopper gets to something, which is that when I see what was in this movie and how I reacted to it, a lot of it feels extremely unserious to the point almost of like slightly winking at the camera. And I would have, when I was younger, I would have found that just completely ruinous. Like, okay, this is just a stupid comedy or whatever. This one, it took some getting used to. But once I started getting used to the fact that he has a super dog, there are these weird robots, a lot of other little elements. I guess I can't recall them all right offhand. But it actually, he does, I think Gunn did a good job of taking those silly elements, just letting them be what they are, just lean full on into the comic book thing with all of its silliness. Somehow he managed to make that enjoyable and slightly funny while still just working with the tone of a heartfelt Superman movie. And I thought that was super cool. And I never would have pictured myself buying into all these kinds of story elements. Just to get through a few more comments. Dunham Mifflin, I don't think Brandon Routh was very good in the 2006 movie. I didn't really care for that either. It's hard to tell how much was him and how much was the movie. It just felt dry and dreary and boring. One thing, it's arbitrary, but one thing that really stuck out to me about that was the Daily Planet. In the Christopher Reeve movies, it was just very upbeat and full of energy. There were people typing all over the place, all kinds of noise going on. In this one, it just felt like this really boring, sleepy building. And that's arbitrary, but that felt emblematic of how that movie sucked all the energy out of everything. Fletcher says, to be fair, the reason he got beat up was because he was fighting a clone of himself. That is true. Denham Mifflin says, does he have more charisma than Routh? I think you're probably being sarcastic based on your previous comment. But yeah, Fletcher, even though he was fighting a clone of himself, I don't think I'm used to seeing him suffer that kind of bodily harm. Like, even when he's fighting, like in Superman 2, where he's fighting the supervillains, they can hit each other and everything, but there's still that feeling of invincibility to it all. And no matter what they do, nobody really seems to be hurt. And so maybe I'm wrong about that, but it feels like he was more actually injured in this one than I was expecting. Erica K literally just got home from watching it, jumping in a little late, but excited for this. Much love, Prophet. Thank you. And feel free definitely to chime in with your first impressions as things unfold. Diego Agundes, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Anytime he fought Engineer or Metaman without Lex's help, he handled them fine. It's only when Lex and Metaman linked up is when he got his butt kicked. Yeah, that's a big part of it. So again, this going to be full of spoilers, but for whatever extent you're familiar with the movie, a big part of why he was being defeated is because Lex Luthor, I think, would analyze Superman's fighting style and come up with preset moves that he could dictate to the people who are fighting for him. So there was a character called the Engineer, and then what was his name? Somebody brought the name up, Metaman or something. It was basically a clone of Superman, not as bad as the Superman 4 one, but they would be getting fed moves from Lex Luthor, and so they could Ultraman. Yeah, they could just counter him and basically kick his butt. Zyke, if I'm pronouncing that right, how was it, and did you like it? I guess I'm in the middle of that right now, but yeah, it's I was I really did like it. It was different, but I enjoyed it. And so it was again, if you laid out a lot of the elements on paper, wouldn't have thought much of it, but it was it surprised me. I liked it. Jose said I enjoyed the film. The movie built an interesting world and introduced interesting characters that I want to see more of. Uh, Drew Harrison, great. Cats have something cornered under the furniture and hope it's a deer rat and not a snake. Interesting. I definitely hope it's not a snake too. Fortunately, that's one thing about living up here in Alaska where I'm at. There's no snakes. You can wander into the woods and literally not worry about stepping on anything or, getting ticks on you or anything like that. Discount Bizarro. Yeah, so one criticism I have, I felt like this was a little cluttered with different characters. To some extent, it's fun. The Justice Gang, they were a whole lot of fun. But I don't know. I warmed up to the idea of the number of characters and stuff that were in it. But one thing I thought wasn't really necessary was for there to be both this engineer character, which it's I don't I don't know if she's super powered in and of itself or if her powers come purely from what Lex Luthor did to her. But she can like manipulate, along with flying and being strong and stuff. She can manipulate little nano-sized particles and create shapes and stuff and turn them into weapons. And then you also had Ultraman. So I felt like those two characters were a little redundant. Specifically, the engineer was unnecessary. If they already had a clone of Superman, I didn't really see the point of also having the engineer. She did a couple things, which is one, against spoilers. At the end, she filled his lungs with little nanoparticles, and that was a way to potentially kill him until he, did whatever he did to save the day or save himself. And also, she was able to hack into the computer. But I feel like there would have been ways to get both those tasks done without introducing a second, somewhat redundant feeling super villain character. I don't know. It's not a super big deal, but I didn't really see the point of that. What else? Lex Luthor obviously was awesome. Let's just get that right out of the way. Most of the actors in this were really good. The Superman was great. I'm spacing on his name. But yeah, Lex Luthor was awesome. Sorry. Lois Lane. I'm just having a bunch of senior moments, even though I'm not technically a senior. Lois Lane, she was really good. She reminded me of Margot Kidder. So I kind of liked that. It felt close to her character to where it felt to me like Lois Lane without feeling like she was straight on just trying to do an impression. We have a couple references. Dunham Mifflin says was Mr. I see. This is where I'm not a deep enough Superman where I recognize this character, Mizklik or whatever. I know it's that little interdimensional, like weird floating imp character. Was he in it? And then Scuzzbopper says there's a bit with a Justice Gang minus Superman fighting in the background. And I think they say it's an unnamed extra dimensional imp. So maybe. Fletcher says, I don't understand how he got those nanoparticles out of his lungs. I think, wasn't it because him flying up into the space and then flying down and slamming into the ground hurt her enough so that she wasn't controlling them? I thought that's what it was. Bunkus Perry White was great. Yeah, he was good. I think other people have said this too. I just don't think he got enough screen time or got enough to do. I feel like more with him would have been good. That's where with some of these characters, giving them more space versus clearing out a little clutter of extra characters and giving some of the core Superman characters room to shine would have been good. Grumpy Kevin used to be lots of characters, meant lots of toys. Maybe now they hope for a spin-off IP. Probably, particularly Mr. Terrific. I always want to say Fantastic or Terrific or something, and I always second guess myself and say the wrong one. Obviously, he was really cool. Everybody's saying that, and that's I think he's a prime candidate for a spin-off character. But yeah, so By and large, I really liked the movie. Um, one question is, was this movie political or was it woke? So going into this, what I was thinking was that everybody who said anything about it being woke or political or focusing on Superman being a immigrant or whatever, and that being a bad thing, that they were just being reactionary dumbasses. I still think they were clearly, but it's not like there was nothing there. This movie was way more, you could call it political, but it didn't shy away from being political in the sense of it was willing to step up and say things about basic human decency, and it wasn't afraid of being called political for that reason. To the point that um it was essentially very on the nose allegory for a lot of political and social issues that are going on today, to the point that it felt like so much of it felt so very currently topical that it felt like they had to have been revising the script up until the last month or so, just because so many things were like so directly related to what's going on in the world. Um, Fletcher says, I think the whole point was that everybody has these dumb political opinions they're trying to project onto Superman, and he doesn't give a shit at all. Yeah, as far so within the movie, I think that's probably true. There's two ways of looking at that. One is people are trying to project their political opinions onto the Superman property or to whatever current movie is out, and I think that's true. Red Letter Media, I believe, said that Superman is like a Rorschach test for people's political opinions. I think those are the people who said it, and I think that's true. Or basically every movie is now. You see what you want to in a movie, to, in to whatever extent it's either validating your political opinions or gives you something to be mad about. But Superman, this movie was definitely to the point that it was a little heavy-handed, but I think that's a good thing. Number one, because I basically agree with every sentiment it had, and I don't know if that's partly why I liked it, because it felt hopeful, but partly it was almost a I don't know, it was almost soothing to see somebody step in and take care of a lot of problems that we're having in the world today and that we're going to be having soon. And there's just something felt therapeutic about seeing Superman come in and help with it, or at least be able to, even though no Superman's actually coming to save us all. And that might have been part of why I enjoyed it, because a lot of my enjoyment was on a purely visceral level and did run contrary to what I would have thought I would have liked. But yeah, I can run through a few things if people in the chat have any feedback on what I'm saying or if they noticed anything else. But they clearly there's the conflict between Moravia and I'm not remembering the name of the other country. So most people compare this to Israel and Palestine, which I can definitely see that. But what's funny is, as I was watching the movie, and I don't know that I've heard anybody else say this, I took that as being a very direct metaphor for, or not even metaphor, but basically allegory for Russia and Ukraine. Uh, tell me if anybody else ever thought of that themselves, or if it just seems like I'm off. But at first, that's what I thought of it as. Israel and Palestine didn't even enter into my mind. So Dark Side of the Light Production says same, Russia and Ukraine for me. Because at the beginning, it's not the same situation on a literal level. Fletcher says, I think it was both. You're probably right. On a literal level, it has one country invading another sovereign country, and they both have space on the map and everything like that. And the way they talked about the justification, saying that they were trying to liberate them from, liberate the people from its own corrupt leadership. And I think they mentioned a specific, they mentioned like a specific leader who was corrupt. It felt like they were trying to signal Vladimir Zelensky. And then they talked about, I think in his argument with Lois, and I'm not sure if I'm placing this right, but there was this question of, do you really think that leader of Moravia is really um, has good intentions or has their best wishes at heart? And I don't know, there were a lot of things like that that felt very directly, I guess, talking about Russia and like Ukraine. There is also the part where I think Fletcher says it, it was Israel and that they made a big deal about how Moravia is a major U.S. ally. But I think it definitely is both. The trend I noticed was that early on, and the further back you were from it, like in terms of the overall geopolitical situation, it did read more like Russia and Ukraine. But then, well, the part of it being their ally was one thing, but then also the closer you zoomed in on it and the more you saw it at a ground level, then it started to read more as Israel and Palestine, like the aesthetics on the ground in terms of it did look like more of a Middle Eastern location, and it looked like an impoverished Middle Eastern people getting invaded. And they were just, instead of going against what looked like an equivalent of the Ukrainian army, it looked like they were going, it wasn't any kind of conventional war. It was them basically attacking civilians, including children, right on the front line. So that part, that part felt a lot more. The closer you got to it on the ground, the more it started feeling like Israel and Palestine. But whatever the case, it obviously read as one and or the other. And I really liked the movie was willing to just step up and acknowledge that uh, there are a lot of really dirty, horrible things going on, and that people are really being hurt, and to apply Superman wanting to help people to direct metaphors for that. I don't know. There's something to be said for the courage of being willing to step up and say things like that. And I appreciated that. It just made it feel more viscerally real. I don't know how well this is going to age as these, specific things become less timely, but it really works for right now, I think. Just my opinion, but maybe that's just where I'm coming from with my sense of politics and social issues and stuff. Uh, it also, I think it made a lot of the arguments more feel more relevant and stuff like that. Where this is, I think, where we get to. Sorry, I don't. Maybe this is what Fletcher had said earlier, where everyone in the movie is trying to project their political opinions onto him or make him part of some kind of agenda. And I like what they did with this in that his big thing was he saw everything as being as simple as just wanting to save people. And the movie is kind of pointing out that it's, well, I don't know if it's pointing it out, but other people are saying it's not that simple. And I don't know, I just liked his idealism. And this is where I think the movie kind of cleverly made Superman more relevant for our time. Part of the issue is people think that, somebody like the X-Men or Avengers or something like that can be more grounded and show more human people struggling with human conflicted people who are imperfect, uh, having more, I don't know, human struggles, being a little darker or stuff like that. And Superman is so bright and optimistic. What do you do with that? I think this movie did a great job with that because it had Superman be bright and optimistic, but show how that optimism clashes with the reality of the world. He maintains it throughout, but the reality and the groundedness of it, to whatever extent this is real and grounded, I know there's a lot of goofy parts, comes from having him clash with those real life issues. Also, of course, just running through the checklist, there's clearly immigration is a thing, um, how they treat him as an immigrant. He's even down to the way arrests are handled and, the way he's thrown out of the ground and says that's not necessary. I think a lot of Lex Luthor's people are meant, I don't know if they're meant to, but they definitely do look like ICE agents. And of course, Lex puts everybody in this prison, which it looks like a immigrant internment camp, which ends up being for everybody he doesn't like, which I think probably the way things are going to end up going in the real world. So obviously, they even mentioned something about how we don't have kings or something like that. And so they were just going right down the checklist of, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, immigration, overseas war issues. It was very, very much on the nose, but I appreciated it. And part of the thing is this isn't really out of line with Superman as I understand it, because he was always very much he was a character who dealt with social issues, and it was a property that dealt with social issues. So obviously uh, would take on he famously would take on the Klan and stuff like that. And so I think they didn't shy away from him, basically using him as a woke / social justice warrior icon. Even in some of the earliest comics, a lot of his first adventures were uh, taking on corrupt business owners, standing up for workers' rights. There was a death penalty thing and stuff like that. Taking rich people and putting them in the place of poor workers and making, basically, how do you feel now or whatever. There was a lot of that kind of stuff. And so I feel like this not only is something that I appreciate, but it feels very Superman. Superman has historically, often anyway, been on the nose allegory for what we might see as left-leaning social justice issues. So if anything, Gunn is going back to a lot of the essence of Superman. So that said, I've talked a lot. I've probably rambled and meandered, but those are my thoughts about the movie. Chad, it's been fun having you give your 2 cents too. But now I'm going to bring in Dark Side of Delight Productions. Like I said before, I offer this to patrons. So if you want to get a little, preference in terms of being able to get your chats, or not your chats, but some of your comments read, or even step in like this, Patreon's the place to do that. Please don't ever feel pressured. If you can't afford it, I don't want your support. I'm doing okay. It helps, but there are some little perks here and there. So I present you Dark Light of Delight Productions, who will have his own and maybe some different takes than I do. And hello, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You are on screen talking in front of everybody now, which you're probably somewhat aware
of. Hey, everybody. Yeah. It's all good.
So you said you're and by the way, I really appreciate this. I've thrown this out there to patrons, and I know it's probably a hard thing to do, but it's nice to have somebody actually take the bait and, join in. And also it's just nice because sitting here talking alone, it gets a little boring or whatever. So nice to have you on. So
thanks.
Sorry, you have a filmmaking background of some kind?
I do. I mean, I haven't done anything that anybody's seen, obviously. It's a lot of independent films and stuff like that. I do own my own video production company. I actually quit my job from 20-something years at the steel mill 4 years ago to do this full time. Now that my kids are all grown and I'm divorced and it's just me, and I can survive off peanut butter and jelly sandwiches if I need to.
Nice.
I do this full time now, but most of the work that I do is stuff for corporate clients and things like that. A lot of training videos, onboarding. I do a little bit of marketing stuff, but it's mostly stuff like that. But I do also do films. Music videos are my favorite thing to do because, I can cram a lot of stuff into 4 minutes, and it doesn't have to necessarily follow any structure or anything like that. So you can be as creative as you want. But filmmaking is what I really love to do. I've made a few short films. I've done a lot of film scores for other people's films and stuff like that, and some sound design, visual effects, and things like that. So, yeah.
Cool. So, but basically, you have a sense of what's involved in filmmaking, and so I think you're seeing this from the perspective of somebody who knows the craft a little bit. So it sounds like you had some different takes on this. So what was your general sense of the movie, or how did it maybe differ from what I was thinking when I saw it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am super hard on films, because for me, and just speaking for myself, I can completely understand where people enjoyed this, and I didn't hate it. For me, it's a difference between hating the film and just not liking it. Because I also saw Jurassic Park this weekend, and I hated that a lot. I didn't hate this. It's just that I like my films to be a little bit more serious. I don't mind funny stuff being in it. I really don't. I think that's healthy. Hell, Schindler's List had comedy in it, and it don't get much more serious than Schindler's List. I just don't like unnecessary goofy being almost throughout the entire thing. And I just felt like it was just way more of that than I cared for. But I knew that going in. As soon as I saw the dog in the trailer, I was like, yeah, this is what it's going to be. So, and I remember Crypto when I was a kid being in like the Super Friends TV show or whatever it was. I was always more of a DC guy. A Marvel guy than DC, Spider-Man. I consider my dad, because that's kind of what you know, I grew up with. That I related to that more so than Superman, because you know, Peter was like me, just this dork who was in a situation he didn't ask for. He didn't come from another planet, any of that stuff. I liked the darker stuff. So like if you think of Logan, I don't know if you ever saw Logan, the Wolverine. I liked that because it was like super dark, serious. Yeah, it had some funny stuff in it too, but I just liked that. The story made a lot more sense to me. This one, not so much. I liked a lot of the political stuff that was in it, no doubt. Like you said, I think it just the fact that I heard that the right was so pissed off about it, I was like, I know I got to go see this film, you know? Just for that alone. And I had to make sure they got their money just because of that. I didn't see it as woke. I could understand where the people that don't like it would see it as that, you know. But there was just a lot of story stuff that I didn't like about it. You know, like for instance, when what part was that? When we first realized that Lex Luthor is controlling Ultraman, and he's you know, throwing out the L-52 and B-5 and all this other stuff, and then you get the two characters that he's like, oh, it's almost like you know this guy, you know, little banter like that clearly these people would have known this already. I don't think needs to happen in this space, and there's another way for us to learn this other than this goofy back and forth that these employees would already know, you know. And there's things like that I don't like, when they just kind of take it just feels like they feel like people are stupid, and it's like, let's just give them anything, you know, and they'll be okay. And I don't like when that happens. I don't like when I feel like that happens. And for me, I like to connect with characters, at least one on an emotional level. And I did. There were two characters in the film that really I connected with, and it was Jonathan, when him and Clark were on the bench outside, and he said how proud of him he was. That to me was the best scene of the entire doggone film. That old man acted his butt. I want to say, because that old man acted his butt off, man. And I just thought that was great. And the part where Lex actually killed the guy in the little prison, I didn't see that coming. I thought it was going to just, I knew it had some dark stuff to it here or there, but I didn't expect it to go that dark. And I actually appreciated that.
That was way more than I thought I was going to see. And see, that's one of the things is I can totally understand where you're coming from here. And again, if I heard a lot of this stuff described on paper, I would not think I would ever like it. And I'm a little bit surprised that I do. I almost want to rewatch it just to see if I like it a second time and how much of it was my initial just emotional experience watching it. It's really hard to tell with this kind of thing. But that specific thing, I agree with you about both. That specific thing like was just way out there, very violent by the standards of this or even any kind of superhero movie.
Yeah.
And basically, for those in the chat, again, spoilers. We're way down the spoiler path.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm saying I've already crossed his line, so I'm just rewarning people. And also, this is very violent. But basically, he took a falafel vendor who Superman had rescued once,
right,
and had him in front of Superman, and basically Russian rouletted him right in front of Superman. And it was dark and it was creepy and it was horrifying, especially considering the humanity of the character. But it worked. And one of the things that surprises me about this movie is that, to me anyway, it makes a lot of these different types of scenes with different tones work. To me, it fit. It didn't feel like it should, and I could see how it went to some people, but he juggled so many different tones, including classic Superman camp, little jokes, really dark stuff like that. And to me, I don't know whether or not it works for everybody. I could see it being up for debate and not being for everybody, but I think there was a certain skill in bringing that together that I found very interesting.
Yeah, I'm with that. For me, I just wish it had been a better balance of it. You know, a little more of the darker stuff, you know, even if it was 50-50, it doesn't have to be, 75% dark and, 25% light. Even if it was 50-50 to me, I feel like I would have enjoyed it more. But I felt like it was 85% goofy, and 15% serious. But the serious stuff I liked a lot. I do wish there were fewer characters. I'm not familiar with like Mr. Fantastic. No, I said it too. Mr. Terrific. I didn't like him, but I'm not familiar with him. And then some of that stuff kind of got on my nerves as well. So it's just different story things that just got on my nerves from a story aspect and the goofiness. But I didn't hate it. I saw it twice because a good friend of mine and I we go to movies quite a bit, and Jurassic Park is our thing. More so, more so for her than it is for me, because I've just, after the third one, I've just never cared about any of the rest of them anymore anyway. But since we were there, we checked out Superman as well. And then my youngest kid, my 18-year-old, wanted to see it, so I saw it twice. And I was kind of hoping I'd have a different take on it the second time around, which, like the Joker, the second Joker movie, when I first saw it, I don't want to say I didn't like it, but it left a weird taste in my mouth because I wasn't expecting that. But when I saw it the second time, I know everybody's going to freak out, but I actually loved it. It made a lot of sense to me. I loved it. I loved the whole music things. I'm a musician as well. I get where the music and the mental health thing all played in. I actually enjoyed that second film a lot. Not as much as the first, because the first was just a masterpiece, but I did like it.
Yeah, I've never seen that second one. I just heard the negative press about it and never saw it. But so I have to say I agree with you about Pa Kent or Jonathan Kent or whatever. One thing this movie did differently that I really liked is his parents felt way more small town and vulnerable by a long shot than in any other movie. Like, they had this, I hate to say it, but uneducated, kind of southern coded charm to them. And they could have fallen just very flat and just been not necessarily yokels, but just like background noise, just the typical farm people there just to make an appearance here and there. And the way they tied that in and made them feel like real characters, especially the dad in that moment, was great. And it made me realize that a lot of these movies, to some extent or another, make the parents into standard kind of mentor characters, kind of like great power comes great responsibility, inspires the man to go on his way. And they were like so different from that. And it was, that was a very rewarding scene. And I love
that scene. And even the mom, when she's first on the phone with them, there were some things that she was doing with her feet that I'm sure a lot of people didn't even see. And I just loved watching her little feet go. It was just so cool, man. It's things like that to me that make a film more so than all the action stuff and all that. And I really enjoyed that part of it.
So go through a couple chats here real quick. Fletcher says, I saw Jurassic Park right before Superman. I was surprised that Jurassic Park was packed with kids and Superman was all adults. I agree. I think with what you're saying is you liked early Jurassic Park and now you have no use for it. It's gone way off the deep end of just fluff.
Yeah. They're milking it for as much as they can.
Yeah. Drew Harrison, I always thought of DC as the campy comics. Marvel was more gritty. I could see that. Batman seems like maybe the exception to that, depending on the iteration of it.
I agree with that, Drew.
Dunham Mifflin, that first Jurassic movie, go us. The rest of the film, the rest of them, not as much. Yeah. So I'm curious about what your take on this. Where the movie started to lose me, I think, or where I felt like maybe it was going to, was in the pocket universe thing. And I don't object to that. I don't think it's too overblown or anything like that. And I think it's part of Superman mythos or whatever. But I felt a little like it was maybe derailed for a while at that point once they spent too much time in it. I liked at first having it be maybe a representation of like a detention camp or something like that. It really worked that way. But somehow, and I'm just curious how much of this is just me, when you take a movie too long out of the real world and put it in this extra dimensional place where reality it's removed from everything else and the consequence of everything else, and reality doesn't seem to operate according to normal rules, it feels kind of like you're moving everything into a dark cartoon land. And I feel a little bit like my attention strays. And I don't know if that's just me, but did you have any kind of same sense of that?
No, I think the only thing that bothered me about that whole thing was actually just the, and I don't know the character's name, the one that could change himself to different elements or whatever the case may be. Like, it was clear that Lex already had this dude's son anyway. And it just felt kind of stupid, that whole scene where he said, hey, you see what's across there? That's your boy, buddy. And as much as, like you said, Lex was really awesome. He was a heck of an actor, man. I think everybody really acted their asses off in this. But that part it was like that was unnecessary. There was some other way to express this to us other than, hey, your kid's over there, ha ha. So if you don't do the right thing, bro, that just really.
Now that you say that about some of this stuff, I see it. in hindsight.
Mhm.
I don't know how much I was just like buying into this cornball and all and just enjoying it, how much I was just uplifted by some of the messaging in it, or, partly wanting to go with both middle fingers up saying, screw the right wing reactionaries. I'm just going to enjoy this.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and by the way, when I say woke, I almost always use that word in a sarcastic way
Oh,
because
same here. Absolutely.
I think it's, yeah. So I use that. I think you said something, you didn't think it was woke. I use that word very imprecisely because I think it's just shitty people using it as a pejorative for being a decent person. But
100%.
yeah,
100.
I think I lost my train of. But oh yeah, I think I'm being kind of forgiving for a lot of things that you're noticing, including. Oh, I could see some of that over explaining, and that's where I want to see this again with maybe a little bit more of a clinical eye and see if I was
Mhm.
just being super forgiving to the movie because I don't like that kind of stuff when they over explain. I was a little surprised that I didn't find that baby as distractingly stupid and computer looking as I should have. It on paper that thing looked awful and should just be like a scene ending
Yeah,
goof,
yeah.
and it was like everything about that looked that way, and for some reason it was fine. But yeah, it was, maybe it's because the whole thing mixes so much cartoony feel with earnestness that it worked. But yeah, I could see your whole I have your kid over there when everybody pretty much knows it, or
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that
yeah.
re-explaining.
And then that whole thing too, like when it ended, crypto, we can't get out of this, and then but he just blows his super breath and he gets out of it anyway.
Yeah.
Like crypto didn't do anything at that point. He just blew his super breath and they got out. So I mean that a lot of that, the story parts just annoy me because there's obviously another way this stuff could unfold and could happen where it wouldn't be goofy. Because I clearly don't have a problem with superhero movies. Like somebody said, it's all kind of stupid anyway, and I'm okay with it being stupid in the confines of that stupidity. But when you go outside of those confines, then it becomes more stupid, I think,
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say. That's where it loses me.
Yeah, and so I guess it all depends. I think this is largely a matter of personal opinion, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on whether I was just being see, I was adjusting my expectations a lot of ways going into this movie. So I don't know if I leaned too hard toward adjusting my expectations and gave too much of a pass. I remember a scene, I don't know if it's the one you're talking about, where he used his breath to just did he use it to push himself out of something or put
Yeah, to push themselves. They were being sucked into the black hole. He has the baby. They're in the little river of plasma, whatever Mr. Terrific called it, and the black hole sucking them in. And he's like, "Crypto, I can't get out of this." And then Crypto comes over, and I think he starts getting all sucked into it too. And then he blows his super breath, which is a propulsion, I guess, to push them back away from it. Which I suppose he just could have did that in the first place, or did he have to be closer to the black hole? I don't know how black holes work necessarily. Know how super breath and black holes, interact with each other, but that it was just kind of stupid to me.
That was one of those ones where now I clearly remember being like, and just kind of like dusting myself off and forgetting it and getting immersed back into the movie.
Yeah.
That okay. Yeah,
it was a lot of that to me. It was just a lot of that.
That one now I remember like being, okay, this feels cheap and stupid, but Superman has such an assortment of powers that can be used in so many different ways, and that one definitely did feel like a kind of lazy scooting your way out of a problem type of
That's
situation.
a really good point. I think a lot of the film was that to me. A lot of lazy stuff, like even using what was the name, the engineer, to some degree with tapping into the computer or whatever the case may be. Although I will say I really did like the switch with his original parents and what they were saying. I like the fact that that went kind of dark. Like, man, we didn't send you here to be a good guy. We sent you here to, just take over. And I liked that. I thought that was really cool, and I liked how he was like, "That's not." He didn't believe that in the first place, and so this is who he is, and that's why he had the conversation with Jonathan. That to me was some really awesome writing. And I just wish there had been more of that kind of thoughtfulness and development, as opposed to just the eye candy. And I think we can have the eye candy with a really awesome story as well and make a really cool superhero movie. I've never been a big Superman guy, but I did like Superman, and I've seen all of them. I preferred the darker ones with Henry Cavill, but I just like dark stuff anyway. Hell, the name of my company is Dark Side of the Light, so I gotta stay on.
That makes sense now. Yeah,
yeah, right, yeah. But I do. I'm attracted to that more than the goody two shoe stuff. Growing up, I didn't have the luxury of goody two shoe. Even though I was that goody two shoe guy, I grew up in the hood. I didn't grow up in the hood light, and grew up around gangs and all that stuff. And I didn't do any of that stuff. So I kind of was that Superman character in a way, but life around me wasn't good and squeaky clean like that. So I never related to it much.
Yeah, I guess a lot depends on just what your experience brings to it, and a lot of mine was my experience of just liking very realistic, grounded stuff for a certain period of time, and then just kind of being willing to, I don't know. I have a way of constantly like over course correcting my expectations of media one way or the other, and this might be one phase of that. But I have a thought about his parents, but I want to just get through some comments here. Are you still good for being on?
Yeah,
for
sure.
A moment? Okay. So Ashura, by the way, welcome. Nice to see you here. My son loved this movie. I'm excited to see it. I think you'll like it, hopefully. Dunham Mifflin, interesting they put in Mr. Terrific. Are there any other more obscure characters? And then Fletcher has a few comments. The thing I'll say about the new JP, and Dunham Mifflin, we'll get back to your characters here in a second. Thing I'll say about the new JP is that I was sitting Jurassic Park, I was sitting in front of a whole team of kids, and they're really getting the movie. Made me feel good seeing young people actually get sucked into the movie with no cynicism or phones. That's always kind of nice.
Yeah, that is great, man. That's absolutely great. Tell me about it. Good deal.
It is weird that we live in a time where paying attention to a movie feels like you're putting in like mental rigor or whatever, but not having a second screen going or fidgeting or playing game, that's an accomplishment now.
Absolutely.
I'm not even saying that sarcastically. That's just where we kind of have our attention spans. Fletcher said something that I'm curious about your thoughts on. That was like a golden/silver age thing where Superman would get into some impossible seeming situation. He would get out of it with some ridiculous new power, like kicking it in or whatever. And I kind of had this thought: at what point is him getting out of those situations with a weird little power or a blow of his breath or whatever? How much of that is just lazy screenwriting, and how much of it is homage to like Silver Age Superman or whatever? And I know at some point that becomes a blank check for anything you want to write into the script. That is a problem, but maybe that was part of why I bought into more of it than I thought. Is it was I don't know, a lot of this stuff, including the over-explaining, I think was seamlessly integrated using some certain amount of comedy or something. I never felt like I was being directly lectured to. I felt like it was like integrated, even if it was a little over-explained, and it felt like it flowed. But
yeah, he brought a really good point there. Yeah, and I will always say I am super hard on film, so I'm not the right guy to talk about this stuff a lot of times because I'm hard on. There was a movie, The American, with George Clooney, and I remember seeing the trailers, and I was expecting one thing, but it was not that like at all. But I actually enjoyed it, to be honest with you. And behind me, there were these two older ladies who were like the dudes on the Muppets, the little old guys that set up. They were talking the whole time. What is this? What's going on? I don't understand. They were so angry, and they were pissing me off at first. But then it was like, they were kind of entertaining too. And it was over. I actually talked to them for a few minutes, and everything they hated about it was what I actually liked about it. So I like how films can just touch everybody in different ways, and what doesn't work for me works for you. And you're probably right about the whole homage thing with the breath things. I never was a big Superman guy, so he may have done this more times than I'm aware of. Blowing himself out of something, just by blowing himself backwards. Maybe that was somebody else somewhere is like, yeah, that's what I've been waiting to see the whole time. And it worked.
Yeah. That's so okay. I have to say, though, number one, I don't think you're the wrong person to bring into this. I think you bring actually a pretty good perspective, and you're not making me doubt myself in terms of like liking this movie, but it does make me kind of second guess in a healthy way, and cuts through a little bit of that fog of just like pure optimism about the movie. So it kind of enriches my understanding looking in hindsight, and maybe whatever second viewing I might end up having. So I do appreciate that.
No problem. I'd love to hear what you think about it the second time around. I'll probably see it a third time as well, because there were some things that I did like about it. There's no doubt.
But I'm also with you in that, regardless of homage or just leaning into silliness, him blowing his way out of that did break the spell for me too, as much as I generally like the movie.
Yeah.
So one thing about the parents I really liked, I liked that they spoke in another language.
Yes, that
made them feel weirdly alien, but also it made them a little more immigrant coded, and I think added to Superman feeling a little more immigrant. Like, it made him read more as a second generation immigrant, hearing his parents talk like that. And there was like this gentle, almost vulnerable way to the way they spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And
I loved it.
I liked that part of it. But it also added a weird, it gave it this alien quality that was easily flipped on its head when you learn that what they were saying was something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled with what to think about that at first, because it doesn't feel like what those characters are supposed to be, but I don't know if that's my limited exposure to mainly just movies where they're always somewhat inspirational. But I did like how it ended up having everything pivot on Superman forming his own values regardless of what they said. And also, I liked that it almost was acknowledging ironic, evil Superman characters. Like this, that was straight out of Invincible. His parents saying that kind of stuff. Have you ever seen Invincible?
I've only seen a few episodes of it. I don't get a chance to watch a lot of TV, really. So,
okay.
But I'll start checking it out. Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, it's. Do you care if I spoil anything for
No,
it?
go for it. No, go for it.
And again, spoilers in the chat, so mute if you don't want to hear anything about Invincible. This is pretty early on in the show. Basically, there's a Superman-type character in Invincible who was sent by his planet he's basically sent to conquer Earth. And so the way his parents were talking to him basically sounded like he was a Viltrumite they sent him here to basically conquer the planet instead of just be a shining... Astra says it was very Viltrumite coded. I felt the same way. So it felt like it was bringing us a little bit into the realm of Invincible or The Boys or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And without exactly saying it or like overtly making us aware of that world, kind of bringing Superman into conflict with that and having him make his own decision to be a different character without being too, like, I don't know, ironic's not the word, but like making too meta or too fourth wall breaking about it. And I really enjoyed that part of it. And I think that was more of a vital part of the movie than I consciously thought at first.
Yeah, I dug that whole thing. And like you said, especially the other language. I'm fascinated by other languages anyway. And sometimes it annoys me when things that talk in English all the doggone times, like no matter where it comes from, it talked English. It's like, yeah, with that, and I know for some people reading subtitles gets annoying and all that, and I get it. And actually the second time I saw it, the theater was so crowded. It was this guy in front of me with a really big head, and I couldn't really but I'd already seen it, so I knew what they were saying anyway. But my kids trying to get around this guy's head too, because it was just that big, and I get that, but I think there's just something so realistic about, somebody coming from a whole different place, having a completely different language, and I loved it. I thought it was beautiful.
So it helps immerse you more in the movie when the alien life who looks exactly like a human speaks. Sorry, I just had to get that in there.
No, because that part gets on my nerves too. It's like even if I personally believe there's something else out there. What it is, where it is, I don't know. But does that mean it's more intelligent than us? Not necessarily. Maybe there's a whole other planet full of T-Rexes right now, or whatever that gelatinous thing that the Justice Gang was fighting outside the window when Lois and Clark were talking, whatever the hell that thing was. Maybe it's just a planet full of whatever that is, It doesn't always have to be humanoid. And I just like when things are different and unique, and it's not so easy to understand what these things are. I love that. I'm actually about to do a film right now that a friend of mine wrote. And I don't want to say too much about it because it does involve an alien. Someone else shot this thing before, and they shot it with a guy in a rubber suit. which I knew wasn't going to work like at all. It just looks like that. And so my whole idea is to not have this person in a rubber suit and to make this thing that's supposed to feel dangerous at first, but it's really not. But I wanted to have this really beautiful look about it, this kind of dangerous, beautiful balance, if you will. But when it finally reveals itself, then it's just all beautiful. But it won't be a rubber suit. It's going to take some work and a lot of visual effects and stuff like that. But I think the end result's going to be awesome.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. Well, I think I'm close to time to wrapping up, but I want to touch on a couple comments. And if you have anything else you want to like throw in there, definitely feel free. But Dundam Mifflin said, interesting they put in Mr. Terrific. Are there any other more obscure characters? So they had to flesh out the Justice Gang. They had a version of the Green Lantern.
Green Lantern, yeah.
Yeah, they had like a stupid, cocky version of him. And I guess he's from the comics. This guy represents some version of Green Lantern from the comics. They also had Hawk Girl, right?
Mm-hmm. A Hawk Woman. I don't know what her thing is. I remember Hawk Man. Because I remember the Justice League with Hawkman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. There may have been one or two others. And I guess that's what they're trying to get out. Now, yeah, I guess Green Lantern was part of it too. And as I understand it, because again, I'm not a big DC guy, the whole Green Lantern thing is like a whole league of Green Lanterns. They're almost like cops or something, or space detectives or something like that. I don't know. And I'm guessing this guy was one of those. And whatever Mr. Terrific is, I don't know if he's a person or a robot or what. I don't know what he's supposed to be exactly.
Yeah. He looked to me like just a person who like operated technology and was a genius, but I couldn't really tell.
Yeah.
And they also, I think the person that Superman was locked up with, I think he's supposed to be a character, right? I just don't remember his name. He ends up fighting with the Justice Gang. It seemed like he was kind of part of it.
Or something like that. Something Morphos maybe or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, there were a few different ones. I'm probably the wrong person to ask, and I don't know that you really are yourself. I don't. And then here's a hot take of a question. Looking back on it, how good was Christopher Reeves? Do you have an opinion about that?
I just grew up with Christopher Reeves, and so there's a nostalgia with him. Mm-hmm. I liked the second movie better than the first, of course, because I loved the whole thing with the Zod and Ursula, and I can't think of the third guy's name.
No,
I like I like that a whole lot. I haven't watched it in a long time, but yeah, I liked it a whole lot. And it's probably why I liked Man of Steel better than this one as well too, because it just kind of brought that whole thing back and it was a little darker and all that. Christopher Reeve was cool, but for me right now, Henry Cavill's my favorite Superman. Then this guy, then Christopher Reeve, and then the rest of them. They all kind of get lumped into one big thing.
I still feel like Christopher Reeve is just Superman to me, and that probably is just childhood bias. But I think this current one he's right up there too. Henry Cavill, I think we just have different opinions of that. He didn't do as much for me personally, but yeah, I think Christopher Reeve was great. I mean, I don't think you can attribute that all to just him being the first Superman or the one of your childhood. I think he legitimately really embodied Superman and Clark Kent in a way that not very many people will.
He definitely set the bar.
Yeah. Ashra said something about intergalactic cops. Essentially, each color commands a different
some of the Green Lantern people. Yeah, that's the whole.
Okay, so this is a Green Lantern thing. Green is hope, yellow fear. Okay, so that's I'll be honest. I always thought Green Lantern seemed stupid when I was younger, and I never really understood what he was. But so I'm just not knowledgeable about that part. Partly, I'm just not immersed in the comics at all. So if it didn't have a good movie iteration, I probably don't know a lot about it.
I used to be. I used to collect comics a lot, but I was definitely more Marvel than DC. The only DC I really liked was probably Batman, and again because for some of the Batman stuff, I think maybe like Batman Detective, whatever, was just darker. And I've always been drawn to more mature things, even as a child. I used to like buy thesauruses and stuff, and I was always reading encyclopedias and things like that. Just childish things for me never really was attractive to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was a kid, but I always gravitated to more mature things. Comic books would be considered that, but some work. Like the Watchmen. That's not kiddie at all, necessarily.
No,
Yeah,
that's about as far from it as you can get.
yeah, but I like that kind of thing.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm adding something in the chat here. I just added a private chat message. So I think I'm about to wrap up. So unless you have anything else to add or chat anything, I think my voice is starting to give just a little bit, and I think I've said what I needed to. But I enjoyed the movie. I think it was fun. I think it, didn't necessarily meet all my expectations, but a lot of that was a good way. But I appreciate your input and your different take on the movie, and I definitely I'm going to marinate in that a little bit, and I think just maybe have a different viewing experience next time to one extent or the other. So
Nico just brought up a good point too, real quick, about the Superman with X-ray vision. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, man. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. Hello. Maybe the mask was lead. That's a really good point, man. That just shot the whole film completely to crap right there.
Oh my gosh.
That just shot the whole thing completely to crap. Either that or he does. Well, no, he knows he's got the X-ray vision because he saw inside the little monster's belly when they were putting Mr. Terrific put the bombs in his belly. So his X-ray vision was definitely working then.
Okay, but so I was just laughing so hard because that seems so obvious. But then Fletcher has a comment that I think might vindicate it.
A lead mask.
Must have been a lead mask. So that might do it right there.
Yeah. But they didn't explain that part. They explained everything else, but not the lead mask. Yeah.
Oh, so maybe Lex Luthor, a couple of his computer henchmen should have had a little quip about, hey, you can't see.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you joining me. It actually ended up being a lot of fun. I wasn't sure how it'd go.
Thank you.
A patron join in, but it was a lot of fun having you on. So
I enjoyed it.
And thanks, chat, for being here. This is a really fun little conversation. I appreciate all your input and just watching. So have a good night, everybody.
See y'all.